I feel like developers are notoriously like don't want to talk to sales. And so how did you deal with that dynamic at LaunchDarkly?
Yeah, it's interesting. You're right. Everything you said is right, but there are like different nuances to it. So early on, we were mostly selling to developers because we're an early stage company and we had kind of this, not really PLG, but a very like, they could have a trial beforehand. And so we went from that motion, which was very much centered around the IC, around the individual. And then over time, we started selling to managers and directors and VPs and C levels. That was a journey that we had to go through. But at first, when we were working directly with developers, the interesting part is eventually, when they tried the tool on their own, they needed someone to help them. It's the old like sales assisted model, right? That even the ICs were like, okay, I really like what I have here. This is going to cost me more than I want to put on a credit card. Developers want to see a lot of value up front. Like they, especially when it's smaller deal IC driven at that time, they don't necessarily so much care about like the vision of where you're going to go as a company. They need some support on like solving their particular problem. Like they really want to figure out like, I have X thing that I need to do, help me get that thing done. So the initial sales team was really focused on what I would call, or what the market calls product sales, which is like, you're a real expert on the product and you know like all the speeds and feeds and you collect the customers problem and you try to figure out how you can wedge your product into that set of problems. That is great and fine, and it allowed us to grow quite a bit. But over time, we had to move from product sales to solution sales, and that's a much bigger leap to take. And so we started just augmenting what we were doing. And what that added to us is we had access to higher level folks earlier, making our deals, larger. And it also helped us become more of a driver of the sales motion. Then essentially in a sales assisted mode, you're oftentimes kind of siloed to a passenger. You can still do things to become more aggressive, but your place is definitely a little bit different.
It's super interesting how it seems like you're basically a developer advocate going in, helping the developers get more out of the tool, and then taking that positive momentum to go find champions internally, go find other people, multi-thread the deal, and try and get it to a sort of a broader organizational wide deployment, and kind of take it from an engineer messing around to like, okay, this is actually like a product or CTO level initiative.
Yeah, there was a couple of customers where like there was someone that just got the tool and like loved it so much. It's something that was unique about that product that we all wish we could have like everywhere, where there was just like real love from the community really, really early on. And so there were many times when someone would come in and they would make a purchase for, I'm talking about literally like $500 in ARR, not MRR, but in ARR. And then over time, you would track that account, and they would go from $500 to $5,000 to $15,000. And then, they would really team with us. And then you would see like, whoa, okay, instead of going through that trajectory, every 6 months, you're going out by 50K, 100K. 3 years later, that account that started at $500 a month was paying us, 900K. It took years to get there. But it was the learning that was happening on both sides. And it was only made possible because that one really early on engineer or architect had such love and affinity for the solution.
I mean, it sounds like LaunchDarkly sort of nailed product market fit pretty early on, but I'm curious, like as you were moving, I always think product market fit is like a moving target. You might have it in one segment for a developer, but then as you're moving up market, trying to sell bigger deals, I'm sure there's like gaps in the product, or maybe people don't believe your value prop as much. Like, what was that journey moving up market like for you at LaunchDarkly, and how were you able to kind of close bigger and bigger deals over time?
It sounds like we got product market fit pretty quickly, but keep in mind, like before I joined, I'm sure they were duking it out, right? They
Fair
were
enough.
like,
Yeah.
so I don't want to I don't want to short sell all the work that the team had done the 2.5 years or 3 years before I was there to really get to the point where it was. But you're right, the product market fit there was really remarkable. It was pretty tremendous. So how did we actually start kind of closing bigger and bigger deals? Well, it started with a couple of things that we did early on. Number one is the segmentation. So having different people focus on different things. This is obvious to a lot of people that are already at large scaled out companies or that have gone through it. But in the early days, especially with technical founders, it's not that obvious. It's not like, oh, okay, like, oh, I didn't realize I needed to segment. And where do I segment and how do I treat these people and how do I compliment? What's the plan? And like, how do I measure success? So we were kind of going through all this. We were fortunate enough to be able to up level most of the existing team, because they were really sharp, great early hires. And then we started hiring into those specialized roles. So we would hire someone that had experience managing, that was familiar with things that sales folks are familiar with once, you go through large transactions, right? They were familiar with MedPick. They understood what it was to build a champion and challenge a champion. And so it was a combination of bringing the team up as well as kind of bringing in folks to augment that skill set. And when we brought in folks, we had a great culture where every new person, whatever skill they had, we magically were able to kind of see it spread across, the org. So like, oh, wow, I've never seen this, business value assessment, but this person over here is using it. I'm going to go take that. And so that's something that was a way in which we were able to kind of grow. It's a different, man, I'm going to sound so old, but it was like a different time because that company was all built out of Oakland. Like the office was there and everybody went in. And if you needed help, you would just like turn and be like, hey, can you help me? Or you would hear something and say like, oh, I want to pick that up. Now the world is different. Like where I'm at Teleport, we're much more distributed very, very early on. And so we have to be intentional about how we do that in a very, you just have to be very intentional about it versus in the past, it just kind of happened.